All right. So it's a federal tax credit program that in some ways mirrors state level tax credit programs that we've had for years, right? This has existed in a number of states, Arizona, Florida, Indiana. For a while, you had Pennsylvania, Illinois, et cetera. Lots of these around the country, but those have been regarding state level taxes. So this is the first time in history that a taxpayer can get a dollar for dollar tax credit off of federal taxes. If you instead now is sending money to the Department of Treasury, you direct it to a scholarship granting organization. Now you will get that dollar for dollar credit. So that's the taxpayer side. And then the scholarship granting organization, the SGO, can then give out scholarships. And those can be mission driven, right? So you might have an SGO that says, in my area, we're going to give scholarships to students in Middle Tennessee. And so maybe that's going to be some of the criteria, but the scholarships, the dollars themselves can be used to cover a range of educational expenses. So the use is much more like an education savings account, right? The administration of it is more like a tax credit scholarship, a tuition scholarship. That's really the gist of it. In terms of how much of a credit you can get, right now it's $1,700 per taxpayer. So that's how much you can put into it. The scholarship granting organizations will make their own decisions about the size of the scholarships. And then in terms of who's eligible from a family standpoint, most students are eligible, but there is an income limitation. And that income limitation, I believe, is 300% of the median area income. So now we're getting really wonky, but there is a slight income limitation on which families can use it. So that's the gist of it.
And what can you use it for?
Yeah. Great question. In terms of what you can use it for, you can use it for the same thing. Some people may be familiar with Coverdell scholarship, right? Or Coverdell expenses. And so you can use it for any of those qualified educational expenses. So this would be things like tuition and fees at a school, books, tutoring, other educational supplies. If there's a student with special needs, you could use it for special needs services. You could use it for room board. It's really educational expenses. Some materials and technology might be included in that. So it's pretty broad in terms of how you could use it. So not just tuition is the key.
Okay. So then you as a taxpayer, you have to decide, okay, yes, I want to take advantage of this tax credit. And then you have to identify the specific SGO you want the funding directed to.
Correct.
And then the SGO will have different things that it could be supporting. But let's say we want to subsidize private schooling. Well, private school would be able to say, hey, here's the percentage of students, and maybe the names of the students, I don't know if that's required, that actually fall below that 300% income level. All of those students potentially could be recipients of a $1,700 benefit if enough money flows into an SGO that's got the mission to fund those kinds of schools. Is that a good summary? What am I missing here?
Yeah, almost. Okay, so most of that is right, but let me clean up just a little bit. So that first, the $1,700, that dollar amount, that's what taxpayers put in. So if the three of us put in $1,700, what's that work out to? $5,100? There's three of us. Yeah. So we each put in $1,700. Let's just say that we want it to go to a scholarship granting organization in Nebraska, which none of us are from, but we picked the exact middle of the United States. And so we said Nebraska. The Nebraska SGO might give scholarships worth $5,000. So that scholarship amount, that dollar amount that families receive, is not tied to the $1,700 amount. That's on the taxpayer side. Okay. So there's going to be some decisions to make, which also means that different SGOs they're going to make different decisions, right? Some are going to have them be much more limited. It might be kind of last dollar style. Some might be bigger tuition grants or whatever grants that go out, not just for tuition.
We'll talk about that. What is the whatever? So what if you wanted to have an SGO that you want to do tutoring, or you wanted to do something that services homeschool students, or what are the limits what can and can't SGOs orient themselves towards?
Yeah, this is going to be a good question. The rules have not been promulgated yet. So that's got to give that pretty sizable disclaimer. Right?
A lot of rules to be made. Yeah.
A lot of rules to be made. And frankly, it's complicated because it's happening at the federal level, right? We saw how complicated it was to get this thing passed. There will be lots of voices that want to be heard during the rulemaking process. So a little bit, Andy, TBD on how specific an SGO can get. Now, per the language in the law, there are a few things, and one of them relates back to Jed's example. An SGO can't be affiliated with a single school. There are some rules just baked right into the law. For instance, they've got to give out 90% of their revenue. So this also means you can't just say, we're now accepting tax credits for our existing nonprofit. You maybe could do that, but you're going to have to start sending 90% of your revenue out the door in scholarships. That doesn't work for most nonprofits. So it actually is going to benefit SGOs to get some scale benefit and work across lots of schools or lots of people, maybe even partner with other organizations. So that's one piece. So SGOs have to benefit students who attend at least 2 schools and at least 10 students. You also cannot direct. You can't just pick out, I would love for you, if you want to just support the Mitchell girls, I would love that, but you're going to have to just send a check directly to me and you're not going to get a tax write-off for it.
So not an individual school, but what about a school district? Yeah, we're going to create an SGO for, I live in Davis public schools. Is that going to be permissible?
That will probably be permissible, but, and I think we're going to get to this, what's probably not going to be permissible is for the decision makers here. And this is a piece we haven't talked about yet, but for governors who are the ones who actually have to opt into this program, it's probably not going to be permissible that they can get too cute and pick and choose based on some of those underlying, use cases.
Okay, I want to get to that because the governor dynamics here and the process for approval and what is within governor's purview and what needs to come from the legislature fast. But before we get there, so it just seems to me as any place where we have opted in, and if there is a school district eligibility, there is going to be massive outreach to everybody. Hey, you can all direct $1,700 a kid to our school district. We'll make sure it gets back to your school. It's going to be for such and such a purpose. Just the massive marketing to try to get the taxpayers to choose the right drop-down menu seems to me like ocean that we're sailing into here soon.
Yeah, I can see how that could be possible, but there are a few things at play. For instance, again, these are funds that are going to families. It's a little bit challenging to imagine a use case for a public school district or for most public school districts. I'm thinking about the one where I live, which is not terribly innovative. I don't know that our district could put something together fast enough, put offerings together fast enough that would require payments such that families would need a third-party scholarship to access those services. If that makes sense. Okay. Because tuition is easy. Like people understand that you got to pay for it. Tutoring even is easy. And somebody's got to pay for the tutoring. But what in a public school district is extra that you're required to pay for that you would say, oh, I need a $5,000 scholarship for, right? Now a family could still apply to an SGO, but again, the family is the decision maker. And so that's where I think districts are going to get probably a little squeamish because they can't control it. If I'm a family and I've got a kid in the district, if I get that scholarship, I have to use it for educational expenses, but I don't have to use it for educational expenses in my district. If that makes sense. That's where there's some unknowns here. But I do want to say one point, and that is students are basically eligible for this regardless of the type of school they attend. And so that's really important too. And I think that gets missed a lot because if you read the headline that says, oh, it's a federal voucher program, that means one very specific thing in a very specific private school context. The fact that you could have a student with exceptional needs attending a charter school and they could apply for a scholarship and they could use some of those funds for some supplemental services, some additional tutoring, et cetera. That's pretty new. And I think a lot of people miss that.